Black delivery driver solves what 20 engineers failed. So smart, fix it now. Everyone was shocked. Marcus Thompson adjusted his delivery cap as he pulled his worn Toyota Camry into the pristine parking lot of Nexus Technologies. The gleaming glass building stood like a monument to innovation in the heart of Silicon Valley, its LED displays cycling through corporate slogans about disrupting the future and revolutionary solutions. At 34, Marcus had seen plenty of these tech campuses during his 3 years as a delivery driver for Quick Bite Foods. Usually, he'd drop off the lunch orders at reception, exchange pleasantries with the security guard, and move on to his next stop. Today felt different, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. As he wheeled his insulated delivery bags through the lobby, Marcus noticed an unusual commotion. Instead of the typical hushed conversations and keyboard clicks, voices carried an edge of frustration. Through the glass conference room walls, he could see a crowd of people in expensive suits gesticulating at a massive display screen, showing what looked like error messages in angry red text. "Excuse me," Marcus said to Jana, the receptionist he'd gotten to know over months of deliveries. "Everything okay today? Seems pretty tense in there." Jana glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "It's a disaster, Marcus. Our entire automated logistics system crashed 3 days ago. We've got 20 of the smartest engineers in the valley working around the clock, but they can't figure out what's wrong. The CEO is losing his mind. We're hemorrhaging money this thing stays down." Marcus nodded sympathetically while organizing the lunch orders. "What kind of logistics system?" "It's supposed to optimize delivery routes for our client companies, figure out the most efficient ways to get packages from point A to point B. But something in the algorithm is causing it to create these impossible loops. Drivers are getting sent in circles, packages are arriving weeks late, and some are just disappearing entirely into the system." As Marcus sorted through the bags, his mind began working. 3 years of navigating the Bay Area's chaotic streets had taught him things no algorithm could capture. He knew that the GPS might say one route was fastest, but construction on Highway 101 meant surface streets were better between 2 and 4 p.m. He knew that the hill on Divisadero looked short on a map, but would kill your delivery time if you were driving an overloaded truck. He knew which neighborhoods had parking restrictions that would force drivers to walk 6 blocks. With heavy packages, "Mind if I take a look?" Marcus asked, surprising himself with the boldness of the question. Jeanette's eyebrows shot up. "Marcus, I appreciate the thought, but these are people with PhDs from MIT and Stanford. They've been coding since they were 12. "I get that," Marcus said, maintaining his friendly demeanor. "But sometimes a fresh perspective helps. Plus, I actually do this stuff for a living." Before Jana could respond, a voice boomed from the conference room. "This is absolutely unacceptable. 3 days. We're supposed to be the leaders in AI-driven logistics, and we can't figure out why our own system is sending drivers to Siberia." The voice belonged to Richard Hartwell III, Nexus Technologies' 31-year-old CEO. He'd inherited the company from his father and had a reputation for being brilliant but volatile. Through the glass, Marcus could see him pacing like a caged animal while engineers hunched over laptops, their faces illuminated by lines of scrolling code. "You know what?" Jana said suddenly. "Why not? At this point, what's the worst that could happen?" She led Marcus to the conference room, her keycard beeping as she opened the door. The conversation immediately stopped as 20 pairs of eyes turned to stare at the black man in the delivery uniform standing in their doorway. Jana?" Richard's voice carried a mixture of confusion and irritation. "We're kind of in the middle of something here." "This is Marcus," Jana said, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. "He's been delivering to us for years, and he actually works in logistics, real-world logistics. I thought maybe he could take a look." A few engineers exchanged glances that Marcus pretended not to notice. He'd seen those looks before, the assumption that someone who drove deliveries couldn't possibly understand their sophisticated systems. Dr. Patricia Chen, the lead engineer, spoke up first. Her voice was polite but dismissive. "That's very kind, but this is quite complex. We're dealing with machine learning algorithms. real-time data processing, and multivariable optimization problems. I understand, Marcus replied calmly. But sometimes complex problems have simple solutions. Mind if I see what the system is actually doing? Richard looked ready to say no, but something in Marcus's confident tone made him pause. Fine, 5 minutes, but then we need to get back to work. Dr. Chen reluctantly turned her laptop screen toward Marcus. The display showed a map of the Bay Area covered in red lines that twisted and looped like a bowl of spaghetti. Delivery routes crisscrossed each other dozens of times, sending drivers from San Francisco to San Jose and back to Oakland for no apparent reason. Marcus studied the screen for a moment, then asked, "Can you show me the raw data the system is working with?" Dr. Chen pulled up another window filled with addresses, coordinates, and time stamps. Marcus's experienced eye quickly identified patterns that had escaped the engineer's notice. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of data points. "Your system thinks this address on Market Street is the same as this one on Marker Avenue in Fremont. Look, the algorithm is reading Market and Marker as identical because it's not accounting for the full street name." Dr. Chen frowned. "That's impossible. We have fuzzy matching protocols to prevent exactly that kind of error." "Sure, but look at the coordinates," Marcus continued. "The GPS data for these addresses is getting averaged when the system thinks they're duplicates. So it's creating a phantom location that doesn't actually exist, somewhere in the middle of San Francisco Bay. Every time the algorithm tries to route through that point, it has to recalculate, and the recalculation creates more phantom points." The room fell silent. Richard moved closer to the screen, his earlier irritation replaced by focused attention. Marcus wasn't finished. "And this cluster here, your system is reading apartment numbers as separate addresses. So instead of one stop at 1247 Oak Street, it thinks there are 12 different locations because someone input the apartments as 1247 to 1, 1247 to 2, and so on. The algorithm is trying to find the most efficient route between 12 addresses that are actually the same building." Dr. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up the address database. Sure enough, the data was riddled with inconsistencies that had seemed minor individually, but created chaos when multiplied across thousands of delivery points. "But how did you see this so quickly?" asked James Morrison, a young engineer who'd been working on the problem for 72 straight hours. Marcus smiled. "Because I've been to all these places. When you spend 3 years driving around the Bay Area, you learn that 1247 Oak Street Apartment 3 is the same building as 1247 Oak Street Unit 3, even if some database thinks they're different places. You learn that Market Street in San Francisco and Marker Avenue in Fremont are 40 miles apart, even if they sound similar." He turned to address the room. "Your algorithm is incredibly sophisticated, but it's working with flawed data. It's like trying to solve a math problem when someone's given you the wrong numbers." Richard stepped forward. "Can you fix it?" "The data? Sure, it'll take some time to clean up, but it's not complicated. You need someone to go through and standardize the address formats, remove the duplicates, and verify the GPS coordinates. Probably a few days of detailed work." Dr. Chen looked skeptical. "And you think that will solve the routing problems?" "I think it'll solve about 90% of them," Marcus replied. "The other 10% comes from the algorithm not understanding real-world constraints. For example, it might calculate that the fastest route goes through downtown during rush hour because the distance is shorter, but any driver will tell you that's the slowest way to get anywhere between 4 and 7 p.m. He walked over to the whiteboard and began sketching a simple flowchart. "You need to add contextual data, traffic patterns, construction schedules, vehicle restrictions, parking availability. The algorithm should know that delivery trucks can't use certain streets, that some neighborhoods require permits for commercial vehicles, that loading zones are only available at specific times." As Marcus explained, the engineers began to understand how their sophisticated system had been undermined by basic data quality issues and a lack of real-world context. They'd spent 3 days looking for complex algorithmic errors when the problem was fundamentally about understanding how delivery actually worked. Richard was quiet for a long moment, then spoke in a voice that carried a mixture of amazement and embarrassment. 20 engineers, PhDs from the best schools in the world. 3 days and nights of work, and you figured it out in 5 minutes. Different perspectives. Marcus replied diplomatically. You all know how to build amazing systems. I just know how they work in the real world. Dr. Chen had been running diagnostics while Marcus talked. He's right, she announced to the room. I've corrected just the address duplicates he identified, and the routing errors have